Welcome to Stories from the Standing Room. Join us for tales of history, phantoms, folklore, ghost stories, mysterious happenings, and more. A playful and fun weekly podcast with a
British husband and his American wife.
Join us from inside our 450-year-old home in the English countryside.
For journeys into the past, the arcane, and the downright spooky.
So five. We've come a long way.
Yeah, 5 whole weeks.
I know. Well, we didn't really know we still don't know what we're doing.
No, not really. I don't think
Kind of. But this is episode 5. Welcome, everyone, to episode 5. We can wait till they start coming in for the live viewership. We are doing this on Facebook Live on Ann Kelly. Friends and family, thank you so much. We're chopping our teeth. What would you say over here? What's the English phrase for practicing?
Ooh,
cutting your teeth?
Cutting your teeth.
Do you guys say cutting your teeth too? All right, well, we're cutting our teeth on our podcast because this is called Stories from the Standing Room. It is history, folklore, ghost stories, and so much more. Thank you. We can see your, not animatrons, emoticons, I guess you could say, but we cannot read your comments till afterwards. Those little bubbly things. And also tonight, though, our website is getting there. I do have a coming soon up on storiesfromthestandingroom.com. Please, we need your stories because we will share them on an upcoming episode. Mr. Beerbaum, my drama teacher from junior high school, I love this man so much, has submitted our story for tonight. One of them, and that is Sister Mary Scary. We are also, he's getting hearts. He's already got fans. We did Godspell and Fiddler on the Roof together. He's a very tolerant man. Very tolerant man.
He must be. Very,
he is extremely tolerant. But he has a story. Now, the school that I went to was built in the 1920s. Can you even get your head around that kind of time?
Primeval time.
1920s is like lava. And
dinosaurs.
Like dinosaurs. Yeah, so actually I think it might be a little bit older than that. But in San Luis Obispo, let's give a shout out to San Luis Obispo, which you love very much.
Yeah, I love San Luis.
Right behind the mission, there they are, San Luis Obispo is with us, is Old Mission School. And there was a time in the late 70s, this is late 70s, when it was just a junior high school. So it was 7th and 8th and 9th grades. And then we went, it was before it was a high school. It's a high school again now. So anyway, there's an upstairs hallway that has always been extra creepy. And Mr. Beerbaum, well, he had to spend the night there one night. So that's Sister Mary Scary. We're also going to be talking about the stone tape theory. And husband, I'll let you go ahead and take it from here. The stone tape theory. What is the stone tape theory?
Well, the stone tape theory is very simply that stone or building, sometimes wood even, potentially even water, can record events.
Yes.
And there's some form of recording. And in certain circumstances, in certain situations, by certain people, you can press playback.
Yes.
So you have a recording and then you have playback. So rather, you've got two forms of sort of ghost theory. One is the spirit, which is an individual entity that still has intelligence and is active in the time that they're in, and they're active within the environment when you see them. The other one is it's basically a recording, or sometimes a series of recordings, because sometimes it's almost similar to the event, but there's like several, maybe 3 or 4 events, and either one of those tracks could play back.
Like you're hitting a different track, for example.
It's like for some reason a different track. So there's like another. Usually they're one event, but sometimes it's like a series of events, and you can hit. I played track 1, track 2, whatever.
So what we're going to talk about is these hauntings that have come up that sometimes people can always say the same thing. We also have some tales from the arcane, your submitted stories that talk about recurring hauntings. I don't want to give away too much, but a man walking through the woods and the same thing happens day after day after day. Is that an entity with consciousness, or is it a memory from the surroundings, just like a recording tape?
It seems more than likely that it's the latter. That it is actually, I mean, the theory and how I'm sort of placing things tonight is that it's a theory of recording, rather than intelligence that is operating in that space with that person. There are a few things, and I will go off later in where it kind of there is an overlap, but I think there are a couple of stories which I'll start with. One is the first one is. an old friend told me that her mother-in-law that lived in a very old farmhouse in North Devon. It probably goes back hundreds of years.
Because for our American audience, hundreds of years isn't even in our psyche. On the East Coast, it is somewhat, but in California, that's just mission.
It will go back hundreds. It will probably go back 900 years.
Jeez.
So it's an old farmhouse. It will probably on the Saxon side. So it would go back, but more like the house, the farm as it stands now, was probably early 18th century, 1710, something like that, as far as I understand it. And in the top layers of the house, the attics, where the servants used to sleep, those rooms, each kind of August, times of the harvest, there'd be somebody at dawn who would knock the...
I'm just going to move your mic because you're talking. That's no worries.
Who would knock the doors?
Yep.
Quite loudly, knock, knock, knock on each of the doors, and he only came at the time of the harvest.
Really?
And it would happen at dawn, and each dawn, at the time of the harvest coming, someone would knock the doors.
Get your ass up and get onto the field.
Exactly. So that's only a sound, but there are other situations where there's more from sound. There's another sound. We're talking about space here, but there's also something I'm going to talk about later, which is about the geography of a space, the greater landscape, as it were. And there's another one that relates to sound, which is an interesting story, which came out locally to where I was living.
Birmingham.
In the Black Country.
Well, they don't know what the Black Country is.
The Black Country is
industrial. Yeah, it's called black because of the industrial skies.
Yeah, because in the 18th and 19th century, it was the highest area of industry on the planet.
So literally, the skies were black with just dust, smoke in
the day. Yeah. There were 10,000 foundries in one small area and 600 coal mines. So and then many small other smoke. So the sky was black during the day and red at night, and it stayed like that for almost 200 years.
Oh wow!
So this area had a lot of coal mines, and it doesn't now. It's like society changes and industry changes. But the story goes back to the mid-70s. So take your mind back to those of you who are old enough. Remember when we used to just tape our music off the radio?
Of course.
You would wait for the radio with your old-fashioned double cassette player and the two fingers, and you press when... Well, there were two teenagers who were doing this.
Yeah, waiting for the DJ to be quiet. So
waiting for the DJ to sit and getting frustrated and lucky on some. But anyway, so they record their music, and then when they play it back... There was no one else in the room. They hear these moaning and groaning and people calling for help.
Did they hear the song as well?
Yeah, the song is there, but behind the song, there's this other series of sounds. People obviously distressed and calling for help. And the local press got hold of this, and initially they said, well, it's a new house. There are no houses on the site. It was like there were things there, but there was no evidence of it being haunted or anything traumatic happening on that space.
It's a new house.
It was a relatively new house, maybe 1950s or kind of relatively new. And then several months later, somebody had came across the story afresh and thought, I've got an idea, I'm going to check something. And it's true, nothing had happened on the, shall we say, the surface on the house. However, in the 1830s, half a mile under the house,
oh my God,
there'd been a mining disaster, and maybe 7 or 8 men were entombed and died.
Jeez. Oh
so
my gosh.
There was so they couldn't find it on the surface, and then no one thought, well, let's look half a mile under the
No one would think that.
But of course, what had happened is they understood underneath where that house is, half a mile down or whatever, it was a really, really deep mine. The tunnel had collapsed early 1830s, I think, and killed these men.
Yes.
And it was if it was that or not, we don't know. But however, there was a strong coincidence. It still can't be explained. The noises that came across on this tape.
Did it sound like men?
I didn't hear it, but I read because it was in the 70s. It was pre-net days. But I read descriptions of people saying they'd heard it, and it was eerie and strange and couldn't be explained.
Bless their hearts. Honey.
So there was the situation where it was on the site of a mining disaster, but that was like the ground underneath.
That would be a very emotionally charged moment as well. An apex of fear, anxiety, and could be that could also be charged as well because of the of being. Can you imagine what that would be like?
But
I mean, that far, half a mile, that horrible way to
you'd
go.
actually want to project yourself into the light. That's where you'd be heading. You'd be heading up through the ground to the light. Somehow you'd be trying to get up there.
That's amazing.
If you were trapped in a mine shaft.
Do you think that those recordings might be on YouTube or something? Think we could
I don't know. Well, it was such an old one, though. I mean, it was just like 74, 75. It was that kind of period. So there is this situation where, well, it's just...
Never know. You never know. I found some old.
Who knows?
Do you have any idea when the first recording ever was made of the human voice? This is a little.
That was about 1862.
You are close. You are very close.
I mean, you can hardly hear it, but it's
How
early
do you know that? It's actually
one of those
1860.
Yeah.
And remember, Edison didn't invent the phonograph until the 1870s. So he's 1877, I'm pretty sure, on that. But really quick, the very first recording, and we can put a link here in the in our comments. It is very interesting. It is a woman singing. What is she singing? It's
something kind of opera.
Yeah, it's
opera.
Oh, Claire de Lune.
Claire de Lune.
She's singing Claire de Lune, and it was 1860 in Paris. Is a Frenchman, and his name is Edouard Léon Scott de Martinville. And now this is now 17 years prior to the phonograph being invented by Thomas Edison.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big deal, and it is on YouTube. We will put the link on. It's very, 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 very creepy.
It is. I've heard this. It's very scratchy, and it's like it's coming through from a different dimension.
It's creepy and beautiful.
Yeah, it is creepy and beautiful.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, often it's things that are earlier than people think. I mean, the first train engine was operating in Cornish Cornish tin mines in the 1820s.
That's insane.
The rocket and the passenger train started in the 1830s, and photography is really early. I've got a glass plate photography of photograph over there from the 1830s.
Well, we need to share that someday.
We will, but I'm just saying it's often you think, well, it's that period, but often you can take it back quite a few decades earlier to where you don't think you have recordings.
So you see photographs from the 1830s. Photographs. These are on glass, right?
Yeah, it's on glass.
Okay,
and you can date it because of what the woman is wearing.
You can date it.
I can date it.
You know that. You know hair.
Because I'm trained in that.
For those who don't know, husband has worked in film and not only in costuming but also time. He's like a time lord. I always blog about this on Facebook. Literally, if I needed to be set in, say it was 1710, you would know whether these fabrics existed, what the hair would be like, and how the fall of the gown.
It's not always as simple as just that. It's the social positioning. It's the social history. Who could have access to what at what time?
Like those colours and fabrics, yes.
Yeah, I mean, not at that time, but historically, certain people and certain classes would have to wear certain things. You were trapped into wearing certain things.
Burlap would probably be mine.
Yeah.
For more than one way, I'm sure, because of my simplicity, perhaps. But I wanted to ask you also, do you know how, since we're talking about Stone's recording, I was going to talk about, my industry is the recording industry, is what I started in radio and television and all that. I don't even know how it works. I did some research to find out how, I've literally queued up these tapes billions of times. But do you know what it is that actually causes these tapes to absorb the sound? It's a material compound, obviously, that's found on Earth, obviously. But do you know how recording works? Have you thought about it?
No, I know there's quartz involved.
Sometimes there's quartz involved. It's magnetic. Yep. It's oxide of iron, really.
Oh, is that what they
and
use
it's
as a
magnet.
coating?
And so remember when we used to erase the tapes, those of you in radio that remember with me, whenever we'd have to erase a tape or clear it of any audio, we would run it over this magnetizing thing that would actually, and that would actually, yes, that would clear it because it is oxide of iron, and it is a magnetic charge. It involves electricity, and that magnetic tape.
So those theories of energy and material. And one of the interesting points is there are more reportings of hauntings in houses which are built of stone.
Yes.
With quartz in.
Right.
And the higher amount of quartz in the stone, the greater the reportings of hauntings. So that goes back to the idea of quartz being involved as a natural
recording material.
So that's interesting, because then obviously we're using things that are from the earth, but perhaps there could be in this 1972 television movie that we were talking about, the stone tape theory, which is really what brought it forward into the public consciousness, which
And
is
gave
a
it
pretty
that
big
name,
deal.
and
Yeah, the stone tape. If you ever get a chance, we can put a link in our comments to the movie. It is available on YouTube.
I mean, it's dated and silly, but it's still it's an
interesting.
interesting theory. You have to look past when it was shot. It's an interesting.
And they were using really, really, really big special effects for that time.
For that time,
to
so
be
you
able
just
to
yeah.
show.
I mean, it's always that thing. Try and be modern, and it doesn't work because you get outdated too quickly.
But they were trying to show what it would be like if there was a repetition, a recording being played back. So the stones that are surrounding us, we are filming from inside our 450-year-old. It's 2009 on the inside, but it's 450-year-old on the outside. But those stones actually, 450 years ago, were recycled from a 1,000-year-old abbey.
So the stones that the house is built of have been recycled,
originally.
were carved and placed and created almost 1,000 years ago.
Which do they have?
And they have a high crystal. They do. The local does have a lot of crystal in it.
Yes.
So, yes. So there we go. That's what opens the doors.
And
But
Alex will be coming back tomorrow, and his ghost might be more active. It wasn't active with our guests that we had.
I think we just pay no attention. It doesn't.
He pays no attention to it. The doors do open and close in the house.
I think.
What?
I was just going to get back onto the idea of the stone tapes and recording.
Yes.
Because there were certain things I might
absolutely
I was just going to say. I mean, one of the things that would be which appears to be quite interesting. Well, several points. A lot of these recording events appear to be quite mundane things, just people walking through. It's not always about battles. Well, I will say a battle story in a moment. It's not always about battles or murder or horrible events. It's people just walking across with a brush or just doing very daily things.
I've got a ghost story about a man walking a dog. Just walking a dog over and over and over.
But I'm just going to say this because I'm a quarter of the way through the theory.
Okay.
So one of the things is it's very mundane, and often this type of recording, rather than the idea of a phantom or a spectre, can be quite solid. And when they're seen, they seem to be quite solid. So it's kind of like a super hologram because you can see them all the way around. They're not flat.
I love that description, super hologram. That is a beautiful way of putting it because you can picture that. A hologram you think of as little specks and things like that, but a super hologram literally as solid as I'm looking at.
So it's not like you get on Star Trek and they have this little sort of flecky thing.
Right.
It's very solid and it's very real. And often it looks real because the light in that room is working with it.
You mean the energy and the
light?
light?
The hologram is looking real because the light, it's looking right to the space it's in.
For example,
it's working with the light. It's not looking too dark or too light. If you were standing in that room, it would look right for that room.
That's for the recordings, correct?
That's for the recordings. That's what makes it a super hologram.
That's interesting because some of the people that talk about the black shadow people, it is a vacuous space. And
this is completely different. This is solid and real and not like, it's not like an energy form. It just, and I suppose one of the things is, if you look at the idea of time, what is time? Now, one of the interesting things which modern quantum physics is looking at is the nature of time. And I know at the point of recording this, CERN is looking at aspects which they're not saying yet, but I do know what they're looking at. And the laboratory in CERN with the particle, what do you call it, that goes around very, very fast? The particle thing at CERN. Anyway, what they're looking at is the first experiment, the first time they switched it on, they were measuring how quick, because it was going as fast or faster than light. It was how quick it would arrive back. And one of the tests which showed them that there was something which they didn't realize was they measured it as arriving before it was sent.
The quantum physics, yes, I understand what you're saying.
And so the quantum physics aspect is that, and they're also saying that time is actually, could almost be like a physical element, like an atom making up that table. And in that case, when this physical element that makes up time, when you actually go, there's two things. It's happening in this dimension. What they're realizing in the work they're doing at CERN, it operates in a dimension we don't know. Right. So there's another dimension it's operating in. But in that dimension, what they think is it's not linear. So time is not, it doesn't happen in a linear motion like A to B to C. It can happen at 2 points in time, but in the same space.
Right.
So the same thing is happening. So theoretically, what could happen is this a playback, or are you both? Is both that person and you're operating in the same space, but not in linear time.
Right.
So it could be much more complex from playback. It could be that linear time is breaking down for some reason.
Well, that would be,
and you're both in the same space doing the same thing.
The others theory. Which one of us is the ghost?
Yeah.
For example, we don't know. When we think about time, we think about 1, 2, 3, yesterday, today, tomorrow. We literally think in lines.
Yeah, they've gone and I'm here.
And now we can, so we always think, and a big thing also, a side thing is, we should mention this, many people who see or encounter anything otherworldly often think that it comes with a special message for them, and that's not the case.
Yeah, it's like walking past the TV and thinking that TV is talking to me. That guy on the TV is talking to me.
He needs me to know what?
Exactly.
He needs me to know a message from who?
I need to go out and buy what from Home Depot? No,
so
it doesn't work like that. That guy is on TV because the TV is switched on.
The TV is
and
on.
And you're walking past. It's not about you.
It would be very. No, it is. That is difficult. Some people go, "Oh, it's my grandmother. It's so and so." And
I mean, it could be, but often I think in this situation, you just happen to be walking past the TV. And
which is a good prop.
I know.
Oh my gosh! Okay, go.
He's a star.
He is.
Yeah, pity no one can see you, by
it's
the way.
okay, I don't mind. It's all right.
One of the things also is, I won't get too deeply into this, but there are other aspects on frequency.
Yes.
7 hertz, for instance, operates at a certain level, which vibrates the skull in a certain way. There's a guy called Christian Landau who talks about this.
Yes.
And he refers to 7 hertz theory, and there was some other work that's been done on sound. For instance, there's a place called Rotherhithe Tunnel in London.
Yes.
It goes underneath the River Thames, and it's always had a reputation for being spooky. It was built probably about 1830s. There's been no murders or anything. It's just been a tunnel. People have always been spooked.
There's been no murders.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is
it's not
like a haunted place. What would have
purposely knowing that there's medieval
feel
torture.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Uncomfortable and spooky, and they think it probably is haunted, but there's no evidence. They just feel spooked.
What would be scary? An old
but
tunnel
when
under
they
the ground?
checked it, it was the frequency. There's a frequency which actually makes the brain feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
And that they've registered that frequency in the tunnel because the water above creates the frequency which makes the brain feel more awkward.
Yes. That's actually, there's theta and alpha states.
Yes.
If you go actually 4 to 7 is theta, which is really where they say the magic happens. It's really
and
when
if
you
hit
get
7. There's also another aspect, sorry for being too technical here, but this, I think it's called PEE, peak experience emotion. And one of the theories of playback is that when you hit PEE, or peak emotional
experience,
emotion, peak experience emotion, that's the point where you're in the most emotional state. You can be in sorrow or bliss or high meditation, but the brain is actually triggered to be in a certain state. And it's suggested that when some of the points of playback are not so much the person who's been recorded, but the player is in this state
is
of
able
PEE.
to receive that. For example, like a radio station.
It's that they just happen to be tuned into that channel at that time.
Well, what you're talking about, the 7 hertz. Anything below 8 hertz. They're saying are theta waves, which is the least understood frequencies.
Yeah.
You know that time when you're going in and out of sleep and you're halfway, you have one foot in both worlds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, you taught me about it, about how to doze. You call it snoozing.
Snoozing.
Where you literally can put 1 foot in sleep and then 1 foot in awake, and you can go back and forth.
Yeah.
That is also a brainwave state, and that one is the 8 to 12 hertz. And that is called the alpha state. So when you actually can go into that part where you turn the corner.
Yep.
So that what you're talking about, there's a whole bunch about the brain that we don't understand. I remember when people used to tell us that in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They say so much about the brain you don't understand. The more that I studied, the more I realized how little we know.
Yeah, we don't.
We don't know crap.
We know nothing.
We know nothing.
However, we do know there are certain potentials for the brain to be picking up. Now, there's 2 theories there. One is the brain is creating it, and the other theory is the brain is able to press playback.
Yes.
So whichever one, we wouldn't know, but it could potentially be that.
Well, in this particular case, which could be a recurrence, he could be hearing a memory. Do you think Mr. Beerbaum was an active participant in this story that I'm going to read? I want you to... You do?
I do.
Okay.
I was going to say one thing before you go into which just occurred to me, and that is very quickly, when you have like haunted pubs and people don't know the story, yet they come into that room, stay the night in the haunted pub or the haunted hotel, and then say, I saw this person doing nothing. They don't know the story. Right. They haven't been primed, yet they always come up with the same experience of the same person doing the same thing.
So that would be a recording.
Means, that can't be their brain coming up with it. That means they have to be playing.
Far too many coincidences, which there really are no coincidences.
No, there's not. And if people, if you have 30 people over 20 years saying I was lying in bed and this one person walked across the room, then they haven't communicated with each other. That's then what the explanation is.
Some of them can explain hairstyles and hats.
Yeah, very great detail.
The shape of the face, sometimes even whether they had eyes or not, or how if they were floating off the ground, which looks like they're floating off the ground, but sometimes they're. Yeah. What are you thinking about the eyes?
Having no eyes. It's like,
you're the one who told me about the red coat.
I know, I was only trying to scare you.
It was dreadful. You know what? We should tell that story. Hand me the phone real quick. I need to see the time real quick. Sorry, please. Really quick, when we were first being together, we were first spending our first night in England together, my first night in England with you, at a home that was built in
whatever, I can't remember, the late
1600s. Now, I had never slept in anything ever. I mean, maybe I might have fell asleep in church in the mission for 5 seconds, but nothing like this. We were way upstairs in the upstairs room, and I had to go down these wooden steps. It was like dilla-dilla, 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 dilla-dilla. And you told me that there was the red coat was
That was
coming.
only because you're a colonial. I wanted to see you.
It was horrible. Absolutely dreadful.
I mean, there's no ghost in the house with a red coat. I just
there
thought
was too. Remember what happened?
But you were then primed and you were just feeling.
Well, you scared me. You told me he said that there was a man with hollowed out eyes that was like a rotted red coat that was coming after me. It's so hilarious. But you know, when you're sleep deprived. I'm jet lagged.
Yeah, you jet lagged.
I'm in a home that's hundreds of years old for the first time, and I'm downstairs in the kitchen by myself. But I guarantee you, I heard knocking in the front room, and I thought it was you. Do you remember that?
I was like. I was
called
in bed,
out to
flights
you.
and flights of stairs upstairs.
I called out to him. I said, "They're very funny." And it was like that, and I thought he's messing with me. And I called out to you, and I heard your voice.
I was too tired. Yeah, I was.
What is it, boy? From far away.
Whoops.
Horrible. Yeah. It was horrible. Well, anyway.
Mr. Beerbum. We need to know about Mr. Beerbum.
We're going to. This is Sister Mary Scary, San Luis Obispo, California. This is actually Mission School, directly behind Mission, the Mission. And we had our lockers in the 9th grade at the far end of this long, dark hallway. And it always did feel creepy. And there was always this little buzz about the nuns. The nuns, there was don't stay here too late because of the nuns. We knew something. But this is Mr. Beerbaum's real ghost story from 1979 or 1980. Are you ready?
Yep.
Here we go. This is one of our first Tales of the Arcane here on Stories from the Standing Room, episode 5.
Okay.
Before there were all-night gas stations, Mr. Beerbaum had been working late at Old Mission School. When he went out to his truck, he saw that he didn't have enough gas to make the 60-mile round trip back to Pozo and then back to San Luis Obispo the next day. He decided he would have to sleep over at the school. Do you have a thought? You look like you're going to say something.
No, I'm just listening.
Oh, you're listening?
I've just got my listening face on.
No, okay. He settled down on the couch. I'm changing this into his perspective. He settled down on the couch in the old faculty lounge by the office. And he finished making the rounds on both floors. The top floor, the bottom floor, and the basement was the cafeteria. So he checked all of those, checked the hallways, checked the stairwells, made sure everything was locked. So he knew he was alone. Completely alone before he laid down on the office couch. The couch was comfortable and he was tired, so it wasn't long before he dozed off. He was startled awake about 2 o'clock in the morning.
2 o'clock's a very particular hour too.
Okay.
More people die at 2 o'clock than any other time.
What? I never knew that.
Yeah, and there are more reported sort of waking dreams and sightings and ghosts at 2 o'clock from any other time in the day. It starts at 2 and it goes to 3, but the big jump starts at 2.
Is that the real witching hour then?
Yeah, okay. and then it goes on till 3, but the big jump starts at 2. So what that is, I don't know, but interesting time.
Yeah, 2 o'clock. Okay, something for him when he woke up, it felt off. He heard it clearly in the upstairs hall, that creepy dark hall. It's long too. Yeah, I wish we need some music. We'll get some music for our podcast.
I'll do the humming in the background.
No, we're good. We're good. I'm good. All right. In the upstairs hall, he heard this tread of footsteps. Now, at first, he thought it was our PE teacher, Coach John. Stop that. But he knew that Coach John was gone and there's no way anybody could be in the school. So he knew that he was alone, but he heard the footsteps. And the footsteps sounded like the kind of shoes his grandmother and all the nuns at his old grade school used to wear.
The old squeaky leather.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, the old leather shoes used to squeak.
From one end of the building, which means that it came from that weird corner. And some of you who are watching actually went to Mission, and they know the corner that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it's dreadful.
It, yeah.
From one end of the hall to the other, and then they went back. And then it was accompanied by a mysterious clinking or rattling. He sat there still in a cold sweat, dreading the thought as the footsteps turned and headed back his way. They were heading to the staircase that was going down to where the couch he was sleeping on. Yep. But as they got to the top, and I've got goosebumps because I know exactly where he's talking about.
Yeah, it's more scary when you
yes.
Yeah.
Right as they got to the top of the staircase, they turned and they went back to where they came. Finally, he placed the rattling. You know what it was? Don't peek. Yes,
I peeked. I can't cheat.
It was the sound of rosary beads dangling from a nun's belt and clattering with every step.
Spooky, the phantom nun.
It was a very long night with very little sleep. He looked forward to finally when Margaret, the cafeteria lady, got there. And she got there about 6 o'clock in the morning. So between 2 and 6, he was sitting there in the dark.
What's that thing we saw at a theatre? They made a film of it, Woman in Black.
Yes.
You have to spend the night there.
Yes, it was totally Woman in Black. He says it was truly eerie. He says he made sure, absolutely, he filled up his gas tank after that.
Yeah, every time.
Every night that he left the school.
Or he'd walk home.
Every night that he left the school and it was late, he would always bid farewell and good night to Sister Mary Scary.
Yeah,
that's a good story.
That's a really good story, and somewhere you know.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, these things become so much more real when they're a place that you know, you can visualize and think, oh.
Well, that one was really real to me because because
you remember being slightly spooked as a child too.
Yes.
So.
I wanted to also do another Tales from the Arcane and also do a shout out to see if we could receive more Tales of the Arcane.
Yeah.
There is a link on storiesfromthestandingroom.com, or please just private message us here. Anything otherworldly. It doesn't have to be ghastly, ghostly.
Yeah.
Ghost stories are great, and we need those ghost stories.
Also, what we're going to do is next week we're starting the family.
Yeah, we're not. Don't tell them yet.
No,
but you can give it a little shout out.
A little shout out. We're getting details, but we're talking about some family ones later. So listen at the end of the show, and then we'll be able to just give you a bit more intro on that.
We need your participation, so that's why we're here with the friends and family that I love and cherish so much to go ahead and start up our podcast, because we are on iTunes. You can find us on iTunes. If you do listen to us on iTunes, could we please ask you to give us a review? If you could subscribe on YouTube, which is Stories from the Standing Room, we would really appreciate that because we are trying to grow the audience. We're also on SoundCloud, and you can always catch the other episodes here on Facebook as well.
Yeah.
So I was going to talk about the white figure in the woods.
Okay.
Because this is actually up. This is up in Birmingham, where you are near the Black Country. Yeah. Okay. This is from Matt. Okay. Matt wrote this in for us.
Right.
He lived near a large woodland walkthrough, which was originally an execution site during the medieval period. Okay. So. Last winter, Matt was walking his dog through the woodland, as there is a quick shortcut which bypasses the main path. It was dark and cold, and suddenly, Matt saw a white figure walking a white dog coming towards him. He looked up and down and back, and it was gone, like nothing had ever happened again. Nothing was there. He thought, was I making that up? It's weird. Then it happened 5 nights in a row, the exact same thing. White figure, white dog, maybe a white leash. I'm not sure.
The same thing is recorded.
The exact same thing happened again in the exact same place. And then, as he approached his house, he looked back, and the figure was standing exactly 10 meters behind him. He never entered the woods again.
And the white is interesting. It's like the grey lady theory. No, we will touch on this. Not going to go into great details here, but it's very. What's interesting, and then for another episode, is the whiteness. It's the same as the dropping in temperature. It's the energy which actually it takes. But we need to talk about that in another one, because there's other things.
There's so much we're going to talk about.
Because there are other things I know we need to touch on.
Well, that's okay. We can touch on the whiteness. It's a very common thing.
It's very common, and it does seem to be about energy transfer and the way the energy is transferred.
Maybe taken out of the space that it's in.
It literally takes the energy.
And
that's why the theory of the temperature drop. because the theory is it literally sucking the energy into itself to make itself known, and it uses the energy in the room, and that causes the energy drop.
Which makes sense. And therefore ghosts aren't drawn as white or misted unless all of us, it can't be a coincidence that happened all over the world for thousands of years. They always say ghost, the white, gray mist is something that's very common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
what are you looking at?
I'm just looking at the screen, just checking we're still filming there.
Oh my God. Okay. Hang on one second. It's saying, oh my gosh. Okay, I'll say done. Storage almost full. Why is it doing that? That's crazy. I'll just say done. Hopefully it won't cut us off.
Oh
my
okay
God.
Yeah, we hope that wasn't interrupting.
If that does happen, if we are cut off, we will come back and finish because we are on a roll and we've got still way more to show. Let's go ahead. We're not ready to be done.
To the camera.
Yeah, so, no, we're not. It shouldn't be going into storage. Okay, let's go ahead and show them the items that you got.
A couple of items, which...
Let me show it to them while you describe this.
Okay. I found this was replacing some floorboards. The floorboards have been down from around 1820 in a house I lived in.
What year?
In the attic. And the cup is about 1770. And it was just something I found inside the house. It had just been thrown under the floorboards, and it was inside the house, and it had been used inside some gunk. It's been used for mixing up some kind of glue or resin, or wouldn't be resin in that.
So
that
they would
period.
have said, "Screw it, we're not going to clean it."
Yeah, the handle's falling off, so let's use it. And then when they finished, they just put it under the floorboards, nailed them down, and it will remain there until I found it 200 years later.
Look how sweet it is. So 17, what year?
It's that. Well, it's Chelsea. It's about 1770.
Oh, Chelsea, of course.
That's it's a form of ceramics. So,
oh, I see.
And that is something I got thrown away. I got a lot of that thrown out of a skip.
Does
that translate? What's skip?
Skip would be a big dumpster.
A big dumpster.
Yeah.
And if it stays still, it might. Oh, there we go. And it's just a lot of plasterwork, 18th century plasterwork.
Thrown away.
Just thrown away from like 1770s again.
Yeah.
And I just got what I could carry.
Yeah, so he took it in his little backpack and off he went, yeah?
Yeah. So they're just two things which are about houses and memories and things that were just part of the house's memory.
Yeah.
And
I just, real quick, I am worried about that. If that does go, I don't know what to do.
Well, we just have to keep on going.
Let's
see what happens.
We will stop and go live on yours. How's that?
We will go live. Yeah. We'll pick up. Well, what we do also wanted to talk about is the geography of memory.
Yes.
Now, it is related to a thing called psychogeography slightly, and it's just about what we're actually referring to here is recurrence, that things will recur in a certain place. For instance, the Bank of England, I think I mentioned this in one of the other shows, is built on a spot which in the Middle Ages had money lending houses.
Right.
And then before that, underneath is the Temple of the Roman God of Money, and I still can't remember the Roman God of Money.
I'll have to look that up. Yeah, we'll Google that.
There are episodes where there
could it have been just a nice view? Maybe they just liked the area.
No, it was a crowded area in the middle of London.
It just so happened to be.
It just so happens that it keeps returning back to the energy of it. There was also a sauna that was raided in the 1990s in London, and it was closed down for prostitution. Now, what they also found out, before that it had been a house, but when they went back to probably the 1820s, it had been a brothel. Then they went back earlier and found out it had been a brothel in the 17th century. Oh. And then they went back and found out there'd been a brothel on that site in the Middle Ages. So the brothels keep getting closed down. It becomes a house. And the energy of it refers back to it being a brothel.
I wonder what it would have been like to live in a house in between the brothels. If it was super sexy there.
Maybe.
Might have been.
Who knows?
Never know. I don't know. Yeah. It might have been. It should be interesting.
Either sexy or feel really exploited, like the pumps. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. I mean, that's the playful side I was talking about. There could be very.
So there is this part, and there are certain writers. A guy I became interested in years ago called I think Ian St. Clair wrote a book in the 70s called Death in Paris, and he looks at this incidence of recurring. And then that was picked up very much by the author Peter Ackroyd, who wrote in particular Hawksmoor, and he very much looks at occurrences and things, and Ackroyd has been a commentator on the energy of things reoccurring throughout time.
That's interesting.
So this idea of as playback, But there's also something which is about the geography of the space too.
Well, that's because it has memory as well. It has maybe a karmic imprint. It could be
something we don't understand, but there's something there where certain places want to return to certain.
And also, certain places often always have chaos around them, or they always.
Do.
Yeah, there are some places that have I want to say darker energy, for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
and some places have
better energy. It's
You ever go into a place and you feel the whole thing sucked out of you? Remember when we walked into that house we're going to be showing in another episode coming up, the Guildhall house. When we walked into that house with the low ceiling,
just feel
it's
like
not. Can't breathe.
Yeah, it's like an average place, and you should be, but you just feel wrung.
It feels like an oppression, or it feels like you described it very well, like sleeping on the edge, sleeping in a graveyard or on the edge of an overpass.
I like sleeping on top of a wall, so you can't relax, or you can't sit there because you could just fall off the wall.
Yes, that's a very good way to describe that.
Unease, that deeply uneasy feeling. You don't know what it is. It's just deeply uneasy. Like, I'm just balancing here, but it is very difficult.
Yes,
sometimes being certain spaces.
It is, and I do want to. I am worried about storage, so we might go ahead and start plugging. Next week is really exciting. We want to do this often. We want to do this frequently. It's family ghost stories. Joy Galloway, who was our very first, she was our very first Tales from the Arcane submitter, is going to. She was our very first one. She's the one with the apparition in the attic, apparition in the rafters.
The rafters.
Yes.
Yeah.
She is, thank you very much, Joy, because she's kicked it all off. We've now got MP3s coming in. We've got messages. People are recording them. You can record them on your smartphone. We're going to actually play your calls back during our show. So we take them written where I can read them and we can play with them. Or if you'd like to read them and submit them, please do so on your smartphone or your computer or your pencil mic. It doesn't really matter. It's easy peasy. So we have one coming in about...
Yeah, we've got the family show next week.
Yes, the family show, which is great, which is really, everybody's got a ghost story in their family. I've got one about my mother.
Yeah,
my mother did come to let me know that she was all right.
We need to keep that one back until next week. I can't help it.
Yeah. Well, that is next week, so that's next Saturday, 10:30. But we need you to submit yours. So, husband, tell him.
Yes, so please submit your family ghost stories. Are often there.
Yeah.
And they're very, very common.
Yes. And
I've got quite a few.
And he's got a ton.
Heap. And on both sides of my family.
And they're they've been passed down throughout the generations, so we're looking forward to hearing yours. And we would like it if you would, if you pop over to Stories from the Standing Room on Facebook. That'd be great if you can give us a like there. I hate to horror it out, but in all my years in media, I'm able to understand the marketing. To go ahead and say, hey, if you get a chance to pop over on YouTube, please give us a subscribe there. We are launching this into a podcast, which again, it's history, folklore, ghost stories, and so much more. We're going to do a thing where we choose these stories that you submit to publish in a book. We're going to give them value added, where they can actually win antiquities. We're gonna be giving away some medieval pieces and things like that.
Some medieval
artwork. We're gonna have artwork, and we're gonna have all kinds of stuff. So, anything else you want to tell them about our value added before?
Well, let's develop and we can tell them over time.
What were you gonna say? You're leaning over to say something.
No, I was just saying let's give away the cats.
Oh my gosh, well, I'd love to be able to give away one of our cats. Look at that. He's copying it.
He's copying. I know. I was just watching.
Do you want one more ghost story before we go? You want the Leper Colony, or do you want?
Oh, yeah, I want the Leper Colony, yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
All right,
I'll resist any jokes about bits falling off. So.
Oh, my gosh. I could tell the coffin joke, husband.
No, let's go Leper Colony.
Okay, this one is interesting. This is a, let me see here if I can find the tail end of this story. I might have dropped it. Okay, let's do the, where's Leper Colony at? Here we go. Family discovered that their holiday home was originally a leper colony.
Quite common.
Is it?
We've got one around the corner, haven't we? We've got Leper Walk.
Well, we do have a leper walk, but how often... quite
a lot of towns would have it was a very common disease.
It's kind of where you keep everybody who's got that, huh?
I was almost about to say it's a popular disease. That would have been
it
a
was
wrong
popular.
word. It was a common disease, unfortunately.
Far more common than today, but they would need to keep you all together. That was the thing. There were the little peering things that you can actually have the lepers come and be able to attend church by looking through a hole in the wall. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so this is actually from Newport. Where's Newport from here?
Well, there's one in Shropshire and one in South Wales.
I don't know which one it is.
But both of them are about 100 miles away, almost close to almost similarly close.
So they went on holiday to Cornwall. For Stephen. Stephen is one of our big participants. We love Stephen. He needs to come over and visit
Cornwall's about 20, starts about 20 miles away.
It's beautiful there. Okay, they went on holiday to Cornwall to their parents-in-law. They were at a holiday cottage, for God's sake.
Holiday
Cottage, which they later found out was built on the side of an old leper colony. At night, their dogs refused to stay downstairs, and they ran up and slept in their room. Whenever they turned off the lights downstairs and walked around upstairs, the lights seemed to not penetrate down the staircase. It lit up the top 3 or 4 stairs and then seemed to stop. They found that when they walked past the top of the stairs, they all felt as if they were being pulled back into the darkness. Which is interesting, yeah?
Not nice.
The father-in-law actually felt like he was being dragged down the stairs. So it was that oppressive, just really dreadful, just empty feeling. The cottage had a very unpleasant feeling about it. And the visitor's book had lots of pages that were torn out. Apparently because these were the pages that the previous guests had complained on.
Yes.
So they stayed for 3 days, and on the last day, a very putrid smell had penetrated the whole cottage, and we packed our things and left.
And went.
So, yeah,
leprosy is such a nasty disease. I remember when I was in India, I was walking down the road, and suddenly looked like the garbage side of the road started moving, and I realised it was a human being.
Oh, honey.
And I stopped, and it kind of scurried up to me because his hands had fallen off and his legs had gone. And he was just basically a beggar. I mean, I gave him what I had, and it was probably more money than he'd ever had, because I had like about £25, had like about $40, which I gave him to.
Good.
And I put it in his, I put it inside his pocket. It's like, don't touch lepers, but of course you do.
Of course you do.
Yeah,
yes.
it's like, well, yeah, that's logic, but this is not logic. This is about emotion in another human being.
Right.
And I also made sure that, I mean, I washed my hands later thoroughly, but I also made sure I touched him, because I think it was important, because in that society he would never be touched.
Right, because the caste system.
Because of the caste system, and he had leprosy.
But it's still so beautiful that you did that, because the poverty and wealth
and what I'm saying is that it is you don't realise unless you come face to face with it, literally eyeball to eyeball, you don't realise what a nasty, nasty disease it is, and it's out there. It's not for us in the developed world, but if you're in somewhere like India, it's there.
But you know, it could be for us. There's no difference between us and them. We are
exactly. Well, what I'm saying is not for us because we don't come across it.
Yes,
it is for us because it's on the same planet.
I think
but we don't experience it because we don't. Even if you go out to the store, you don't come across lepers where you get the cart from to go in the store. You just don't. In the Western world,
I think it's beautiful that you gave him that money.
But what I was saying from that story is it's a really, really, really nasty disease, and you can see why it will create a really negative energy, because so much suffering in that spot.
It's a beautiful display of humanity, husband. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're in that situation. You wouldn't do anything else.
Well, I think there are some people that don't, but I'm glad that you did, and I hope that more of you do. And so
go around checking lepers. Or?
No, giving to other people and feeling other people's humanity and sharing your ghost stories with us.
Yes, yeah, we
Please.
want your stories.
Also, if you could share the story, share the podcast.
Yeah, tell your mates. We exist.
Tell your mates, tell your friends, share us on Facebook, and please write to us if you have any questions, comments, queries, or critiques.
Well, I don't know if I go that far.
Really, sure? Oh, come on.
Maybe.
These are our friends.
I know, that's the worst critique.
So it's every Saturday night we are here. We have ghost stories, histories, folklore, and more.
All kind of creepy stuff.
Thank you so much for joining us. For some reason, our storage
Tales
managed.
and conversation. Yeah, we managed. We stayed with you.
Just because it is outside of the physical world, I've always wanted to say this. It doesn't mean that it's okay. Like when people, the Ouija boards and things like that, just because something happens, it doesn't mean that that's all right. Just because it's outside, it also doesn't mean it's all-knowing. Just because it's occult or outside of the realm of physical.
Yeah, it could be a sleeping ghost. It's like really...
Well, you could have dark energies and positive energies. So
I mean, also, it might be a ill-educated, bigoted person. It's like, who knows? It's not the all-knowing person.
Yes.
Could be a complete prat.
Yeah, that is a common thing that we come across, is that people think because there is something outside of the physical world, then therefore it must equate to godliness or goodness.
And
that's not always the case.
Or also the other way, people might equate it to being very dark and demonic. It's probably not neither. It's just a situation.
Yes.
It's neither good nor bad. It just is that television set you're walking past when you walk through that room.
Just like people.
Just like people.
Okay, so until next week. Next week, send in your family stories.
Family stories next week.
It's going to be an amazing episode next week. This will be episode 6.
Episode 6.
Looking forward to it. We love you.
Episode 6.
Episode
6 fingers.
Yeah, I know. We're getting up there. Thank you so much for being with us. And we will respond to you. I've got to go up to Heathrow tomorrow to get Alex.
Yep.
Alex is coming. So I won't be able to put the podcast up until day after.
Yes, so we'll be a bit late this week.
I'll be a little bit later on the podcast. But thank you so much. And we will see you on the other side.
And for those of you who have written comments, as the usual thing, we apologise because we can't see them when they come up.
We can't.
But we will respond to them later.
They could be talking crap about us and we wouldn't know.
Exactly, so it's a good job we can't see it. But anyway, so we apologise for not being able to see your comments.
We
but
sure
we know
love
you're
you.
writing them, but we just can't respond. We love you.
Bye-bye, everybody. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
We love you. Bye-bye.